Hello, everyone. Welcome to our peer sharing call for this month, titled Volunteer Management. We still have some people coming in, but we're going to go ahead and get started anyway. So let's just go ahead and get the show started. Just give you a brief introduction of what we're going to cover. We're going to provide information and resources on effective strategies for volunteer management. And please feel free to share any resources of your own. We will provide time at the end of the call for questions or ideas of your own. And here's our agenda. First, we're going to introduce our moderator, and then we'll introduce our speakers, and then we'll introduce our topics. And then our speakers will discuss those topics and give you some valuable resources. Then we'll open up the call for all of our attendees to provide questions or ideas. And at the end, we'll provide you some additional resources for volunteer management, and then we'll close the call. So let me introduce you to our moderator, Katie Orlando. She is the executive director of Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Northeast Iowa. Are you there, Katie? Let me go ahead and unmute you. Are you there? Can you hear us?
Got herself. Katie, this is Chad. It looks like you have your microphone muted on your end. There you go.
I can hear you. Hi, everyone. How's everybody doing? You guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just making sure. Yeah, so welcome everyone to the call today about volunteer management. The style of the call today will be a little bit different than our past panel style calls. We have 4 experts that will be joining us, or 4 peers that will be joining us with some best practices at their agencies that they use pertaining to different subtopics of volunteer management. So let's go ahead and introduce those folks now. Are you guys still able to hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, just making sure. Okay. So we have joining us Ellen Krogman. She's the mentoring coordinator for Mentoring Connection in Delaware County. Kathy Schwartzhoff, who's the mentoring coordinator for the Alan McKee Mentoring Program. Both of those programs that Ellen and Kathy are part of are also part of Helping Services. Val Maximovich, she's the mentoring coordinator for the Independence Community School District Mustang Mentoring. We also have Ellen Vanderloo. She's the program coordinator for Teammates Waterloo. And then I'll just round us out at the very end. So shall we get started? Should we just jump right in? Let's do it. So our first topic within the realm of volunteer management is screening, selecting, and matching volunteers. And Ellen Krogman will be sharing a little bit about her experience in this area and hitting on some topics that other peers have submitted that they're curious to find out more information about. For every subtopic, we'll have the peers share probably for about 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll leave a few minutes for questions after each subtopic. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Ellen K.
Ellen, this is Chad. It looks like your line should be unmuted, so you should be able to go, but we can't hear you right now if you're talking. Well, it looks like you just muted your line on your end. There you go. Yeah, we're not able to hear you. We can put in the 800 number and the access code if you're able to maybe call in from a phone. And so I don't know, Katie, if you want to go on to the next one and we can come back to Ellen.
Yep, sounds like a good plan. So the next piece we're going to cover today was training volunteers, and Kathy Schwartzhoff will be leading the way in that topic.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Oh, we can hear you.
Great. And just one thing I wanted to clarify is that, yes, I do coordinate the IMP mentoring program, but I also coordinate the Howard County My Club program and Building Bridges Through Mentoring, the Winnebago County program as well. So a few things that I wanted to start off with sharing are tips for engaging people during the training and how to keep it fun and interactive and that kind of thing. And one thing that we do, especially with our initial training with our mentors, is we have some activities that we have everyone participate in. And just to tell you, sometimes when I do trainings, I have 2 people in the room with me. Sometimes I have 3 or 4, but usually it's 2. And so for small programs, know that you can do your trainings just as effectively with a small group. And sometimes I find that a smaller group, people are more apt to ask questions and feel comfortable asking the question when you set a tone of that than they would be in a big group. So don't always, beat yourself up that you couldn't get 27 people in the room kind of thing. So just keep that in mind. And I did want to just describe an activity that we do that's really good. And I know we stole it from somebody, but I can't tell. I'm sorry, I didn't want to say steal it. We borrowed it from someone else, and I can't even tell you who it was, but it's an activity that we call the STAR activity, and it's all about roles that mentors can play, and we have some roles written out on a sheet of paper, things like lawyer, banker, parent, guide, good listener, those kinds of things. Those are written on a sheet of paper, and then we go around the group, and there's a star in the middle of the table, and people put down one of the roles, and then we all comment on, is this an appropriate role? And if it is, we put it inside the star, and if it's inappropriate, we put it outside of the star. And it just brings out that whole discussion of boundaries and what roles are appropriate and what roles are inappropriate. And again, it gives people an opportunity to talk a little bit. And then, too, it even gets at some of those challenges that we can face as a mentor of, oh, I didn't realize that, at least in our program, we have a guideline that we don't want the mentor to be an employer. In other words, pay the youth for, cutting the grass with them or something like that. And so it's really great when you can get people to interact. And I always see, too, if someone's quiet, I usually ask them, what do you think about what, was just shared? And they always share something. It may not be a paragraph, it may be a few sentences, but sometimes those people that are quiet share more, how can I even say this, intuitive things that it's great to hear their input. So that's one activity that we do. And then another one that I'm sure many of you do, either if it's in your initial training or even I've thought about doing this at each of our ongoing trainings, is to have just a little scenario of something that exemplifies kind of a uncomfortable situation that a mentor has dealt with, and then ask other mentors to comment on that. What would you do in this situation? And it really gets a conversation going. And if you've got a big group, you could vary that activity to have several scenarios, have them work in groups, and someone share about what the situation was, that kind of thing. Just gets people in conversation, but also gets them, again, thinking about those challenges that could happen. Not that you want to scare them, but it is part of our role as being a quality program to prepare people for the challenges that they may face during mentoring. So That's a couple of the ideas that I had. Then the other thing related to retraining mentors, we don't really ask people to come back in after a certain period of time. We are going to be starting something that we're going to be doing that because we've got some recruitment materials for them to get, and we're thinking about doing some retraining. So that's in the thought process. But whenever I do have, and again, I'm a small program, community-based program, whenever I've got something that I need to kind of remind people about, either you're seeing a pattern that people are doing. A good example is a couple months ago we saw that we have a rule that at our mentoring events, cell phones out aren't really encouraged, and we had that happen at one of our events during an intermission of a play. And, you know, people thought it was perfectly acceptable to have the kids be on the phone, and it's just that missed opportunity of, you know, having a conversation. So when we need to give those reminders, we put information in our monthly newsletter, not to say you were naughty mentors, get your act together, but we say it in a way that is like, hey, we just want to remind you that this is one of the rules in our program, and we really encourage you, and kind of tell you them the rationale, and then say thank you for, you know, doing a good job. And we always find too, if you sandwich a recommendation with a compliment on the beginning end and a compliment on the end, it's much better received than, you know, getting kind of snarky about it. So that's not good. And then too, I've oftentimes sent just a general email to mentors saying, hey, we just want to remind you about this as well. And then that certainly can be an opportunity during your support phone calls, which I know some mentoring programs call coaching kinds of opportunities, just to share with the mentor specifically if there's some things that you see that they need to improve on. And again, that sandwich theory is a really good one of saying, wow, you know, I noticed that you're, you know, going to a lot of movies, and that's so great because this youth didn't have that opportunity to go to the movie or not. But you know, I'm a little concerned that the last one that you went to was, and I'm just pretending, is, you know, Jaws 2 or something, you know, that was pretty bloody and that kind of thing. Maybe you want to think about some other things, and I really appreciate that you get your monthly log forms in a timely manner. Again, that sandwich thing is just, I think, a great idea. So those are my thoughts that I have. Just one other thing too I'll mention with our ongoing trainings is we always have our mentors vote on the topics that they want for their trainings, because we can make stuff up and think that this particular topic is a great idea, and then nobody comes to the training. And I think that's really important that mentors feel that they have a role in deciding things, and then they do participate better. So that was the one final note that I had related to that. So it looks like they're still working to get Ellen on, and I know Ellen's going to have just some really great ideas related to screening and selecting and matching mentors that is going to be very helpful to the group.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for sharing all of those ideas. Yeah, I saw that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kathy, for sharing all of your ideas. Chad and Michelle, is it possible to unmute everybody? So if anyone has any questions for Kathy about what she shared, or maybe some other thoughts that they would like to pick Kathy's brain over, we can take some time now before we switch to Ellen K.
Yes, we can do that.
Great. And then Ellen K, if you haven't unmuted yourself in your style yet, sometimes it's *6, so I would try that first. Sounds like a rap.
And are there any questions that anybody has, or anything that participants would like to share about training volunteers.
All right, hearing no further questions, thank you so much, Kathy. Ellen Kate, do you want to give it a shot and see if we're able to hear you? Still not able to hear Ellen K. Hear Ellen W, or Ellen V, I think.
You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, whoever said that.
This is Ellen Vanderloo.
Oh, okay, great. Well, let's give Ellen K a little bit more time to figure it out. Ellen K, I'll chat with you privately about some other tips that might help. But let's skip to Val Maximovich. She's the mentoring coordinator for the Independence Community School District Mustang Mentoring Program, and she's going to share a little bit more about supporting and retaining volunteers.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, right. Well, I know that all of us work hard at supporting our mentors, and I support them in many ways, like many of you probably do. You know, being available, emailing, texting, phone calls periodically, as well as surveys throughout the year through SurveyMonkey to see how it's going, what they've been doing with their mentors. We have just a school-based mentoring program, because it's only during the school year, during the school day. So that allows me to be available in the different buildings on different days so they can have easy access to my office. This year we started something new. We are meeting the first Monday of every month at the local coffee shop, 4 to 5 o'clock. And that's been working really well. We're really focusing on building relationships through this opportunity. And every month I give them activities of what the kids are involved in that month, no school days, early out, opportunities.
Somebody is calling in from the phone only, and we have a little feedback, and we can't control those who are on the phone only. So if you are calling in through the phone, if you can mute your phone line on your phone, that would be great. Thank you. All right, you can continue.
Okay. So some of the things we've been doing, to support our mentors, back in September, we promoted this Mentor Monday, and that was at our back to school event. And each month there's a different topic shared. And as Kathy mentioned, I asked them if there's anything they'd like to hear about. Sometimes I get ideas, sometimes I don't. So I try to follow the calendar. Like the first month we met about the school building that they mentor in, their emergency procedures. What do they do if there's a tornado? Where do they go if there's a fire? What's the lockdown procedures? And some of them didn't even know what lockout and lockdown meant, so that made them feel more comfortable. So I felt that was good mentor support. Some buildings provide handouts. There's signs on the wall that they can see where they go when. So I try to orientate them per building. They also wanted to hear about bullying, which is a topic in all different areas. And we had a private educational agency called Riverview Center. They're based out of Waterloo or Dubuque. And they came in and did a very nice session about what that looks like and how to respond to your child. I try to keep my eyes open for different trainings that I can bring information to them. And one was strategies for treating the anxious child. So I brought them some handouts about if their child's nervous, about missing recess, or not sitting with their friends, or they're dealing with a lot at home. What some things they can do to help them come down from that excitement or anxiousness, or who to see in the building. It was exciting because in January, during National Mentoring Month, the mayor wanted to come to attend, and she was very excited about the group that we have. It varies every month, but we usually have a good-sized group. And she signed the proclamation, and we posted pictures on Facebook of the mentors that month, so they could share how many years they'd been mentoring. So they enjoyed that. I think one of the most enjoyable events was one they recommended was game day, and we just brought in some games they may not know how to play. The kids today, you know, they all can just pick up a video game and play. Well, they may not be able to pick up board games. So we try to encourage that because it encourages communication. So some of them thought that was fun. So if there's a game they didn't know how to play, like Chinese checkers, we picked another partner that did know how to play that. So they learned how to play that. We taught them how to play Yahtzee. A couple of them didn't know how to play Yahtzee. They were very excited about that. And then a couple of months ago, we did a day in the life of a child. And I had a teacher come in and present about how the kids rotate during the day. You know, they just don't sit in the classroom. They leave the classroom, they go to PE, then they come back and they do reading, and then they have lunch, and then they go to music. So they were very excited to see that. They didn't realize there was a 6-day cycle in some buildings. Some buildings they have at the high school blocks, you know, 4 blocks in the day. Some have by hour. So they were excited to hear about that. Last month was kind of a Debbie Downer. We did Pathways. They came in and talked about drug and alcohol affects youth, and they had the numbers for our county. But I had a couple of mentors stop me and say they were really glad to hear that information. It just helped them stimulate conversation with their child, talk about it with each other that day. So that was good. Yet to come, we have the public library coming in to talk about how their student can be involved with the summer reading program. So we're excited about that. And then in June, we're going to do an end-of-the-year wrap-up and a little celebration and thank them for their time this year and do their surveys and make sure they come back next year and just kind of have more time to support each other and ask questions and talk about how their year went mentoring. Otherwise, I just keep up with, as I mentioned, about SurveyMonkey. I just try to keep communicating with them through that and email, phone calls, as much as I can. Being in small town, rural Iowa, we have the opportunity to do those things. So that's my spiel.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that all, Val. Does anybody have any questions for her? I really liked the day in the life of a child training voice. I thought that was like really interesting and smart to do. But does anyone else have any feedback for Val? Any thoughts, questions? All right, quiet group today. It looks like Ellen K is now able to speak, so let's see if we can hear her. Ellen K, are you with us? Nope, doesn't look like it yet, Ellen K.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, finally, technology is not on my side today.
All right, well, Ellen K, you are next. I know that you can't stay with us for very long, but Ellen K is going to share what she can in the minutes she has with us about screening, selecting, and matching volunteers.
Great. Well, I just wanted to touch base on the screening, selecting, and matching. Are you guys hearing an echo, or is it just me?
I think it's
I
only
hear an
on your
echo.
line.
Let me see here. Just 1 second.
Ellen, if you have your computer.
Okay, there you go. I turned my. Yeah, I just turned it down. Thank you.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Anyway, the type of volunteers that make the best mentor and what personality types should we watch out for? Well, you know, just kind of in a nutshell, after the mentor has completed the application and the mentor has agreed to a 1-year commitment, the mentor then participates, of course, in the face-to-face meetings. We do the interview, actually the face-to-face interview. And then we conduct reference checks on the mentor as well as background checks. And the background checks, of course, consist of the criminal background check, national criminal records database, the sex offender child abuse registries, and then the driver's license check. And for, in my particular situation, you know, for the community-based matches, of course, we do all of the background checks, but I also have school-based matches in the high school setting, or just school-based, the lunchtime mentoring. And in that respect, then we don't do the background checks because they're in that public setting. But the type of volunteers that make the best mentors, you know, in interviewing those volunteers, I really have noticed, you know, those that are multitaskers. They've got a lot of things going on. They seem to be the best ones as volunteer mentors, because I don't know, it's amazing. They're able to just juggle everything, and they just have they tend to have a real high energy, upbeat personality. Also, someone who has experience working with youth in different settings. I know currently I have a lot of active or retired teachers who are mentors for me, and they're just amazing. Or they've got a lot of experience working with youth groups, church groups, Bible schools, that type of thing. Also, in screening them, they're outgoing, they are reliable, which is a huge one that I look for. When I call their references, I'm finding out, if they are, when they say they're going to be somewhere, that they're there, that they're reliable, because that child that they're matched with, they look forward to every Tuesday at 11 o'clock when their mentor comes to meet with them. And so I really look for that when I'm screening my applicants, because there's nothing worse than getting that phone call. My mentor hasn't been here for a week or a couple of weeks, and the child is just, really missing that connection that they've established. I also look for somebody that's very patient, very caring, and very committed when I'm screening applicants. Let's see here. The next question was, how do you make matches? What is your process or line of thinking to determine the best pairing possible? Well, after interviewing the mentor and the mentee, I really, when I'm meeting with them, I'm really getting to know them. I'm really trying to get to know their personality. And then I am doing my best to match them up, the mentee with the mentor, that's real similar in personality and likes and dislikes. So I'm looking at, their applications and just trying to kind of find that niche. Also, I looked at, their interest. The matches that share similar interests just tend to really hit it off, hit the ground running in their relationship. I look at their personality and the fact that, if you have a very hyper mentee, and I have more of a mild-mannered, quiet mentor who's very caring and supportive, that might not work out so well together. So. And then for what background checks I do, what's the other question? I kind of mentioned that. There was another question in there. Do you have any good fallback reference questions if the ones that I'm typically asking are yielding a neutral feedback response? And I would say the one other question that I ask the volunteers is to name 3 qualities that really stand out about themselves that they would bring to a mentoring relationship. And so, that kind of helps me to kind of really gauge, what stands out about them. And when I'm also doing the reference checks, I'm also asking the person that's answering the questions that same question, so that I can kind of gauge, what are the qualities that come to mind right now that really stand out about this particular person and why they would be a good mentor for a child. And so, and then with the mentee screening, the parents complete the application and or sign the parent permission form, giving their child permission to be involved. It's a 1-year commitment. And then, I do, in my community-based matches, I go into the home and meet with the mentee and the parent, and get to know them, be in their home environment, and make sure that they truly understand what the program is all about. And then with that screening, too, then I'm, able to kind of really get to know that child when they're in a comfortable setting, such as their home environment. And so they tend to kind of let their hair down and be more comfortable. Then in the school-based setting, I don't always get to face-to-face meet the parents. They have, yes, given permission by completing the parent permission form, but I do go into the schools and meet with those kids and really get to know them in that in that respect. And that is where then I would match them in a school-based setting is, bring that volunteer right into the school so they can meet the child and kind of understand the whole flow of the mentoring relationship on a weekly basis, coming into school and just what that will look like. So, but that's kind of the screening process in a nutshell from me, and I don't know if anyone has any questions, but I'm happy to answer if you do.
Any questions for Ellen K? Feel free to go ahead and ask them now. Some of you guys are self-muted, so just be sure to unmute yourself before you talk. All right, thanks, Ellen K. I'm glad that you were able to share with us.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, next up is Ellen Vanderloo. Again, Ellen is the mentor coordinator for Teammates of Waterloo, and she's going to share a little bit more about volunteer motivation and recognition. So, Ellen Vanderloo, are you able to hear us?
Let's hope so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I kind of look at recognition and appreciation kind of all going together. And I know that there was a question about what to do for mentors that are losing steam and getting burned out. I think the biggest thing is just keeping the lines of communication open and try to troubleshoot if a mentor is struggling. So I'm hearing feedback. Is anybody else hearing feedback?
We are. If you're on a computer and your phone, can you turn the volume down on your computer?
I have the volume off
on
my computer.
I have no other smart things to share. Chad, do you have any thoughts?
No, that's it. Yeah, just if other folks are using their phone to call in and listen in, and also through their computer, just, please turn the volume down on your computer.
Okay. So as I said, just try to keep communicating, and sometimes you can enlist the help of other mentors to encourage a mentor that might be struggling, and that can be helpful. Do you want me to continue? Is this making sense with this feedback or not?
It's actually not that hard for us to hear. You sound better than Ellen K when she first started, so
okay.
maybe
I'll just keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, so recognitions, the number one thing is the Governor's Certificate of Appreciation that's offered through the IMP, because that's free and everybody should be doing that. So, I always make sure that I get all of my mentors that I have listed on that so that those certificates come. And I try to pass those out during the month of January. A really effective thing is, like, I had a city councilman that was a mentor, and so we went to the city council meeting and presented him with his certificate in front of the whole council, and of course it's televised in the community where we live, so that ended up kind of being a big deal and a promo opportunity for us as well. So if you can kind of make it a big deal for people to get those certificates, I think that is really neat. In January, of course, I always try to have like a mentor appreciation luncheon, and usually I have a theme. Like one year, the theme was "You deserve to be treated like royalty," and I was able to get Miss Iowa to come to Waterloo, and so she was at our luncheon, and let me tell you, the people just loved having her there. That was a big deal that year. Another year, we had a lot of building projects going on in our schools, and so I decorated all the tables with Lincoln logs and Legos, and then we had all kinds of drawings of the new schools and displayed around the room, and then we had one of the architects come and explain about the new school that was being built and why they made certain decisions and designs and things. So that was very interesting to our volunteers as well. And it's always good if you can have the superintendent come to any kind of mentor appreciation, mentor lunches. They love to see the superintendent and hear from the superintendent how much they're appreciated. And if the superintendent can give them any updates, I feel like as our volunteers, they're some of the most interested people in our community. So they should get to have the information first, and they should be in the know because they're going to go out and tell other people, their neighbors and friends, about what's going on in the Waterloo schools. And also at different mentor gatherings, you might have information about like character counts, or right now Leader in Me is a big initiative in our schools. So educating our volunteers about what that means for our students and staff, or PBIS, the Positive Behavior Interventions, so they understand what the teachers and the staff are trying to do with behavior. And then finally, like we just had a bond referendum, and so giving our mentors information about why we were having a school bond and what we hope to accomplish, and educating them so that they could, we of course couldn't tell them to vote yes, but at least we could give them information and let them ask questions. Another thing that we've done the last 2 years here in Waterloo is in the Sunday paper in January, we published all the names of the mentors for the Teammates Mentoring Program, and this year we included Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Job Foundation, our 3 certified mentoring programs. And so it was really cool to see a whole page listed with all the mentors' names, and getting that public acknowledgement of their volunteerism. Also in January, I have the mentees, the kids, write a thank you note, a personal thank you note to give to their mentor. So I provide a thank you, and basically the one I used this year was red, and it said, "Thank you for your encouragement, guidance, and inspiration. You've been a mentor to me." And then it's blank inside, and I ask the guidance counselor, the mentor coordinator, someone specific in the building, to have their student write a thank you, and then the student personally give that to the mentor. And I can tell from personal experience that it really means a lot to receive a handwritten thank you note from your mentee, and it's good practice for them as well. Okay, so kind of like what Ellen was talking about, it's always good if you can get new games to play or new crafts or projects to work on. That kind of helps keep things fresh with the mentors too. Also, you can even encourage your mentor and mentee to do a volunteer activity together if that can work out in your setting. And kind of throughout the year, I just keep in touch with my mentors, especially through email. I have about 6 older people that don't have email, so that's a little hard. But the rest of them, I can send like a greeting at Thanksgiving time and says, "We're thankful for you." And then at Christmas time, I send out a holiday card from the mentoring program thanking them. In February, in the past, I've done a little thank you card. It says, "The heart of a volunteer comes in only one size, big enough to change the world. Thank you for caring enough to make a difference. You were meant to be a volunteer." Then you attach a little mint to it. But there's lots of ideas. Like if you Google volunteer appreciation, and I know Pinterest has lots of ideas too. And I've even been known to kind of borrow ideas. There's a catalog that comes out called Positive Promotions, and like last year in April for Volunteer Appreciation, we had a packet of goldfish attached to a cute little note that said, "It's official, we love our volunteers," and then it had little catchy phrases that were under that. This year we gave them lifesavers, and with a little note on it that said something about how they're lifesavers to be our volunteers. So I'm kind of grouping volunteers and mentors all together. In March, you can send out an Irish blessing. "You're worth your weight in gold." You can attach like a gold coin with chocolate in it or something like that if you want to. And then, of course, April is our big month. Here in Waterloo, we have the Mayor's Volunteer Awards, and so I always nominate 1 or 2 volunteers for those awards. Through the state volunteer programs, we have the Excellence in Mentoring Award, and you can try to nominate one of your outstanding volunteers for that award. There's the Iowa Volunteer Hall of Fame. that you can see if maybe one of your volunteers would qualify for that. We have character counts awards every year here. So you can nominate one of your mentors as a citizen of character. And then, of course, in June, we have the Governor's Volunteer Awards, which is non-competitive, so everybody that you nominate can receive that award. You can nominate them individually, or if you have a group that you want to recognize. For example, I had a group of John Deere mentors, and so instead of giving each one of them an award, I gave it to them as a group, and so it's really cool. Like the picture that they have with the governor is, you know, this group of like 10 John Deere employees standing with Governor Branstad with their recognition, and then that was something that, you know, I made sure that John Deere publicity people knew about, that they could include in their information within John Deere. So anytime, like, or even if you have like a church group that are mentors, like you get a lot of mentors from one church group, nominate them as a group, and then like go back to the church and say, you know, look, this group was recognized by the governor of the state of Iowa for being outstanding mentors, and thank you so much, you're making a difference. And then also you can nominate people for time of service. So if you have mentors that have mentored 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you can nominate them for Governor's Volunteer Awards. This year is the first time that we've had to pay $15 for each one of those awards. So that can get a little pricey too if you make a lot of nominations. But I guess you just have to pick out the people that you really feel it deserve it, and find a way to cover the cost. Another thing I've done is made name badges for my volunteers. They love to wear their badges that identify them as teammates, mentors. Sometimes you can give pins, or if you have T-shirts or pens, anything that kind of connects them with your program and helps out, even out in the public, for them to be identified as mentors. My husband loves to tell the story about having his teammate's badge hanging in his car, and he got stopped for speeding. And long story short, the patrolman complimented him on being a mentor and gave him a warning, which that never happens to me, but somehow he gets away with that. Let's see. Another thing you can do, like in January, I always try to make a presentation to our school board about the status of our mentoring program in the schools. Some years I've taken pictures of different mentors in different settings and kind of made a little slideshow so that the school board and the public can see the variety of mentors, different, you know, we have men and women, young and old, and some, you know, read with their students, others are playing basketball. So just kind of showing the variety of mentoring opportunities available. One thing that I think that mentors love is to see data. So if you can provide your mentors with data that shows that they're making a difference, that really means a lot to people that want to know, you know, am I doing any good here? But if you can show that, you know, probably not individually, but as a group, you know, students are improving in their behavior, they're improving in their attendance, they're improving in their grades and how they're doing in their classrooms. That really says to mentors, I'm making a difference. And they'll hang in there for you. I was going to say, too, if you have a mentor gathering and you can't afford to give everybody something, sometimes I'll get maybe 1 or 2 items, and then we'll have a drawing, and the lucky winner will get to take home the prize that day. Let's see. Other kind of appreciation things we've done is, like I said, you're a lifesaver, or you can wrap around a candy bar. You're worth $100,000. I saw another one where they put a little rope around a bottle of A&W root beer, and it said, you're an awesome, like A&W ESOME volunteer. So if you don't have a lot of people, you could do something like that. One year, I was able to get garden seeds at a really inexpensive, I think they were like 10 cents a packet. So we made up a little card that went with it that said volunteers plant the seeds of kindness, and everybody got to have a packet of seeds in the spring. And be sure, like, if your schools have individual volunteer appreciation activities at the end of the school year, that they include your mentors in that. I also have tried to send birthday cards to my mentors, and it's really neat. I had some kids for a service project make birthday cards for me, so they're handmade, kid-drawn birthday cards, and then I write a little personal happy birthday, thank you for mentoring note inside and send it to the mentor. So they really like that. And then, of course, with mentors, you always have to stress that sometimes we can't see changes right away, that it takes time. Another thing, I know it's not the greatest, but when a mentor dies, it's important to acknowledge to the family and to the community that this person was a mentor and that they did have an impact. So I always try to write a letter, or maybe even have the superintendent sign on with me to the family, acknowledging the contributions this person made as a mentor and a volunteer to our schools. We have an advisory board, so I think it's good to have some of your volunteer, or most of my advisory board is our mentors as well. I have a couple that aren't, but including your volunteers on your advisory board, I think, keeps them more engaged too. I like to invite my mentors to come with me when I make presentations, especially if it's to a male group. It's good to have a male volunteer come with you and speak and give it from a male perspective, because otherwise a lot of times I feel like groups are like, oh, that's a female women kind of activity. But if you have one or two males up there saying, you know, I mentor, I can do it, you know, it's fun, it's not that hard, then the audience members can imagine themselves being a mentor. We sometimes have the opportunity to be on the radio or on TV, so it's good to include your volunteers in those opportunities. If a mentor is in the news, you know, like an anniversary or birthday or something like that, I always try to clip out from the paper the little article or picture about them and send it to them with a note. If employers are supportive of their volunteers or of their employees volunteering, I always try to connect with employers and let them know how much we appreciate they're giving employees time to meet with us and meet with our kids. And then I guess the final thing for recognition too is if there's opportunities for newspaper stories or magazine articles about mentoring, try to get stories about your mentors and their activities showcased. So that's about what I have. Any questions, thoughts, other ideas?
I liked all of your ideas, Ellen. Thank you so much for sharing all of those. We always have a hard time coming up with like cute sayings, but it sounds like I just need to call you and tell you what we're trying to do, and then you'll in 5 seconds come up with something adorable to put on a piece of candy.
I have a file that's about 2 inches thick of stuff like that.
That's good. And yeah, it was helpful to hear all of the different awards too. Like our agency's aware of most of them, but some of them we hadn't heard before. So yeah, we're gonna look into those. Great. Well, not hearing any other questions, I'll share a couple of minutes worth of thoughts about match closures and reassessing mentors and little youth. Sorry, if I throw out the word big and little, I apologize. That's just what we say. So mentors and mentees, just assume that's what I mean. But re-engaging everybody. When we put this call in the newsletter, some folks emailed me back and said they didn't feel like they would have enough to share about the section, but they were just curious about another agency's perspective on how you would re-engage the mentor for expected or unexpected closures, and then reassuring the mentee that it's not their fault. So at Big Brothers Big Sisters, the majority of our matches close before the child turns 18 or graduates high school, whichever happens second, because the mentor moves or their life change, it's usually the mentor's quote-unquote fault. It's like the reason the match is closing is because of the mentor. And so we try in all situations when we can to make sure that we get the child and the mentor and the family and a staff member all in the same room so we can have a structured match closure meeting. We try to make sure that we hit on all of the highlights of the match. So we'll ask questions, about what was your favorite thing to do together, what do you think you'll miss most. We try to get the relationship to continue after Big Brothers Big Sisters. So while it won't be a Big Brothers Big Sisters match, we're hoping the mentor and the mentee can at least engage maybe once a month, twice a month, quarterly, when the mentor comes back to the area twice a year, something so that the child knows what the future of the relationship can hold and knows that this person is not going to leave their life. Obviously, we all know the reason why we match youth with mentors is so they can have somebody consistent that's not going to be just another adult who leaves them. And we want to make sure that this doesn't turn into just another adult on the list. However, this isn't always possible. We've had a handful of mentors so far this year that just have lost contact with us, one or two that I'm aware of at least. And so that's really tough, as I'm sure most of you can relate who do this part of the match support. When a mentor just disappears, and it's really easy for the child to think it's their fault, something that they did. So our staff will be really engaged and make sure that we meet with the child themselves or one-on-one or with the family and just share that, unfortunately this mentor, we haven't heard from them, we apologize. We hope that we can find another great big brother or big sister for you. And then we focus more on what do you want your next relationship to look like? Do you want school or community-based mentoring? What would you like to learn? So essentially we're doing the re-interview right on the spot and trying to put some hope back in this child's life that, it wasn't about you, it was about this adult. Unfortunately, it happens in life. And we want to make sure that the next time around we can match you with somebody that you're going to have even more fun or just as much fun with, if not more. So it can be tough, but our staff make sure that we follow up with that child. If we can't find a mentor right away to rematch them, we keep them on our check-in list, and we wouldn't just call them once every 6 months. We would call them a little bit more frequently just to check in, almost like we're doing match support, but just checking in with the child to make sure they're okay and that they know that we're still working hard to find them another mentor and anything new that you've thought of since we last talked and other things. So we try to keep in touch with the family. Ellen just mentioned a really hard topic, and for whatever reason this year our agency we keep experiencing the death of mentors, either currently enrolled or past mentors, where the matches have closed because the child just got too busy in middle and high school, but even though they're no longer affiliated as an active match with us, we still keep tabs on them, we still care, and they still connect unofficially as a mentor-mentee match. And so we do the exact same thing that Ellen mentioned, only minus the superintendent's letter, which we might consider doing with Ellen's help. But we make sure that we're checking in with the child, again, regularly. If it's an active match and the big passes away unexpectedly, we'll keep that match on our caseload open. And for us, that just means that we're continuing to check in with them either monthly or every other month. And when we can or when we need to or when the family asks, we'll make sure that child gets other support outside of our agency with coping with the loss, bereavement counseling, whatever it takes. If we can't do it in kind, then our agency would pay for that. It's just important for us. With our mentors, it rarely happens that we close matches because the little moves. It does happen, but not as much as the bigs moving or mentors moving. So for expected moving, I guess for either side, if the mentor knows, in 2 months I'm moving to Texas, or the child knows at the end of the school year I'm moving to Des Moines, we'll again have an in-person sit down and check in with them, and again focus on the future, the future of the match. For unexpected closures where the child loses contact with the agency, or this year we've had 2 of our kiddos go away to residential treatment far away. It just happens that in both those cases the mentors have actually kept the match open and have driven the 2 to 3 hours to see the child, but that's definitely not the expectation. We were very impressed that they're willing to keep trying and have the patience and putting in all those miles on their vehicles to go out and see them twice a month. But if they said no, then that would also be, an unexpected closure too. We want to make sure that the mentors know that, again, as Ellen V. and everyone else has said, that they brought value to the child's life. We're so sorry that the child and the family lost touch or situations changed, but we would love to rematch you if you're willing. We kind of assess as a staff before we have this conversation with the mentor, though, if we think we should rematch the mentor. So some of the things that we'll look at before we just rematch the mentor, we'll look at the notes that we took during enrollment, their interviews, their background checks. Obviously they made it through the first time, but maybe things have changed in their life. We'll look at the volunteer if they asked to be rematched, what that motivation is. If it's still in the same lines as what Big Brother or what our program's mentoring is about, we'll rematch them. But if it's because they, are doing it for some self-gratification, whatever it could be, then we would probably flag that. We also want to make sure that during the match they adhere to safety guidelines and any other collateral information that happened during the match. We just want to make sure that we're rematching the volunteer, not because we have 62 kids on our waiting list, but because we think that this person would be a mentor, again, a good mentor again the second time around. So the way that we do like the behind the scenes stuff, the way that we pick, like, do we do another interview? What background checks do we do again? This is what we do. And most of this is guided by our insurance company. Some of this is Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America standards, but our insurance company that provides our liability insurance for our mentors actually has more strict policies. So a lot of this is what they want, and we're fine with that. So if there hasn't been a lapse, if we're just like rematching the mentor right away, we will complete an updated background check, including references and a criminal history check, if the most recent background check was completed 3 or more years prior to the match closing. So if we're just continuing with no gap and the mentor was they just went through the process 6 months ago, we don't need to do another background check. It's still new and acceptable. If there was a gap between matches that was less than 6 months, we'll complete an update of the interview information that we collect via phone or in person. We like to talk to the mentor in person as much as we can, and the information that we're gathering is just contact information, update on living situation. If there's additional roommates, then we'll conduct those background checks. If there's been a different employment, if they have guns in their home now, we will assess that, and then just anything else that might come up. And we do that both for community-based and our school-based matches. If there's been a 6 to 1 year gap in the time the mentor's been mentoring, we'll do, again, the background checks. We will do an updated background check, all of them, including references, and we'll also do an update of their interview information via phone or in person. And if there's a greater than 1 year gap, we'll start the process completely from scratch. I know some agencies, when we say that, they're like, what? That's a lot of work. But that's 1 year has passed, and a lot can happen in a year. Gosh, a year ago, I was living in New Hampshire, living the dream, and I changed my house, I changed my job, I belong to new organizations. So that's a long time. So we just do everything from scratch, including an in-person interview, our 90-minute interview that we do with like at least 50 questions. We do completely new background checks, references, criminal history checks, etc. And again, that's for both community-based and our site-based. And then, we go from there. So we hope that all of our awesome mentors will want to be rematched in the program. We try really hard, but sometimes they just, want to take a break or just want to move on to try something new. We'll keep them on our list and check in with them occasionally. So usually it's like after 90 days or 6 months, we'll check back in with them and see if they've changed their minds. We also try to have some littles in mind, some mentees in mind, so when we do make the calls to re-engage the mentor, we can say, like, hey, I know that, your mentee Jimmy moved on, and I hope you guys are still keeping in touch, like through letters or, phone calls occasionally. But we have this new mentee, his name's Sammy, and he also likes baseball, but unlike Jimmy, he actually likes to fish, and he's like adorable. Look at his picture. Well, we'll describe, the family situation and stuff. So we hope to re-engage the mentor because we always have a need for mentors if they're great. If the mentor we all have those mentors that are just, average or require a ton of coaching and repeat coaching. So there's like a difference between a mentor who you have to coach because they just need the education and then they take your feedback and go with it, versus somebody who you're always coaching that it's like the same thing over and over and over again. Like maybe have the child pick their activity because they don't like doing what you're picking, or they don't want to work on homework when you take them in your community-based match. Like let them pick what they want to do, and maybe eventually they'll open up to homework. If you're saying the same stuff over and over again, like maybe it's okay that you don't push so hard to re-engage the mentor, or before you rematch them, if they want to be rematched, make sure you have that like heart-to-heart conversation. Like, hey, you know what, your first match, we've asked you like what you think you could do better, and we've heard what you say, but one thing that you haven't said that has come up a few times is that you didn't really let your child pick any of the activities. So what are we going to do this next time? Like, give me 3 ways that you're going to ensure that you allow the child to pick. And if they don't answer the question, then you probably are going to have that heart-to-heart, like, well, maybe this isn't the best time. Like, we're really looking for somebody that, it's a friendship. It's not, you're not fixing the child, you're not teaching the child, like it's the child's teaching you back, and you're not allowing that process to happen. So that's what we do. So I know that it's, according to my computer, 3:01. Does anybody have any additional questions? And if not, I'll let Chad just jump right in and share the last pieces of information that the Iowa Mentoring Partnership wanted to make sure we all knew. I also want to say thank you to Michelle Jones. She's been helping with these peer sharing calls the whole year, and tomorrow's her last day of her AmeriCorps Vista term. So Michelle, we wish you the best. Yeah, go ahead, Chad.
I'll keep it brief, but yeah, again, just want to say thanks to Michelle, since tomorrow's her last day as a Vista member with our Mentoring Partnership. So as Katie said, thanks for her time with these peer share webinars and other things she's helped with the IMP. So just a couple of additional resources around volunteer management. So we helped host with the Volunteer Centers of Iowa group a 6-webinar series called the Volunteer Management Training Series. It just ended, but they were all recorded, and I know they're going to be doing another series again. I believe that you can sign up for, but there is a cost to access it. But it is each session is about an hour and a half long, and there's a lot of great different presenters and materials that are shared that you would have access to with that cost. And so the link is there. It'll be included in the follow-up materials as well. But that's a great tool, something to consider for your whole staff too in your organization. And then, like I said, the training materials that you get from it as well, you could utilize in different components of your mentoring organization. And then on the next slide just talks about the Volunteer Centers of Iowa and the group that they are. And so they're about 17 volunteer centers across the state in Iowa. And so we work with them through a variety of ways, but the link is there so you can find information. You can see who are in your area locally or in your region, so that's a great resource to reach out to. Another kind of thinking of volunteer management, reaching out to United Ways or local community foundations. They may have volunteer management resources available, or recognition opportunities for your mentors and mentees and other volunteers, your board members. I think when you think of volunteer management, the main group is, and are your mentors, but it's the families, it's the board members, it's other individuals that are coming in to help maybe file or, put mailers together, things like that. All of these tactics you talked about today from your peers can be utilized in kind of all ways, not just your mentors and mentees. So just some things to think about. And then also, we're always here as the Iowa Mentoring Partnership and the Iowa Commission on Volunteer Service to support you and answer questions and any needs you have. And then I'll just throw out 2 other things. One, just a reminder, is the WIGIO group. I know some of you shared some thoughts and ideas today that you said, oh yeah, and we have templates of this and, a stack of ideas of all different recognition thoughts and things like that. Those are great resources to share on WIGIO with your peers as well as a follow-up. And then the last point is there's an organization called Points of Light, which we are a partner with in different ways that they have a lot of volunteer management resources, and one resource is the Service Enterprise, which we can help provide some information on that if you're ever interested. So yeah, so just again want to say thank you, and I think the next slide shows the next peer share call scheduled for next month in May. It's going to be going into mentor training, kind of that ongoing, which we touched on a little bit today, but it'll go into a little more detail. So Katie, I don't know if you have additional comments and you want to close us out?
Yeah, I don't have any additional comments. I appreciate everyone who participated on the call today. Thank you so much, Kathy, Val, Ellen, and Ellen. Their contact information is now on the screen, but also is available on the Iowa Mentoring Partnership website, iowamentoring.org. And I hope everyone can join us again next call. If anyone listening has additional ideas for call topics, we'd love to hear about them. Or if you know of an agency that has something really great to share with peers across the state, also let us know that too. So thanks everyone for participating and sharing today. Thanks, Michelle, again. We'll miss you. Hope you have hope our paths cross again professionally at some point. And Chad, as always, a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Great. Thank you all. And we'll post the materials on the website following today. Have a great day.